Most Christian fundamentalist groups have some form of anti-gay rhetoric, but what happens when a group goes from fundamentalist to extremist? When its rhetoric turns from that of traditional values to that of doom and hate speech, should it be allowed? In the case of the Westboro Baptist Church, should they be considered church or hate group? According to the Supreme Court, defamation cannot be protected under the right to free speech. The Westboro Baptist Church's rhetoric qualifies as defamation and should not be protected by free speech.
The Westboro Baptist Church believes that America is being punished by God because of its tolerance for homosexuals. They picket funerals of soldiers, gay or straight, and carry signs with phrases like, "Thank God for 9/11" on them. They say their justifications come from the Bible, and if you check their website, you will find many quotes from Scripture. But are these quotes being used properly or taken out of context? We interviewed Stephen Sudeth, a theology teacher at Marymount College, who has his master's in theology and over 10 years of experience as a church leader, to find out how justified the Westboro Baptist Church really is.
So some of the things we looked at, first of all of them but one, so 19 of the 20 that they had posted, were from the Old Testament and came from Leviticus, Psalms, and Proverbs. Mm-hmm. So they like to use the King James version, which has the most authoritative language because it was asked to be created by a king who wanted to keep power. The one New Testament reference it made was from Romans 10. When you put it in its full context, the writer and the author of Romans is saying, yeah, you can't judge on one person because God shows mercy on all his people.
Do they have the right biblical interpretation?
There isn't, I would say, a one true correct way to interpret the Bible because it has always lived through our historical social contexts. You're going to say?
But does that mean that they can interpret it the way that essentially it was known back then? Because things have changed, obviously.
Yes, things have drastically changed. Because I think a lot of their confessions of faith are from the 16 and 1700s that they try to ascribe to as a church. I would feel comfortable saying that there are some interpretations that are more accurate than others. And whenever you have a church quoting scripture for means of hate, I think it's really hard to reconcile that to the gospel message of grace. I think if anybody is going to call themselves Christian or say that they follow in the ways of Jesus, the first step is always grace, and then the second step is always love. I have a hard time finding grace, peace, and justice in the works of the Westboro Baptist Church.
After putting those clips into their larger context, it seems that the Westboro Baptist Church doesn't have much of a leg to stand on, but they are still allowed to say what they want. Other countries, such as England, have kept the Westboro Baptist Church from even entering the country for fear that their hate speech will incite discord and violence. If other countries have figured this out, why are they allowed to practice in America? Unfortunately, a recent Supreme Court case upheld their right to protest outside funerals. So right to free speech trumps right to privacy. But aren't there exceptions to free speech protection?
Just as hate crimes are in a special legal category, certain forms of hate speech have been excluded from the First Amendment. The Supreme Court case, Chaplinsky v. New York, established that fighting words whose sole purpose are to incite violence, are not constitutionally protected. Another case, Beauharnais v. Illinois, established that defamatory speech directed towards groups of specific race, gender, or sexual orientation are not constitutionally protected. So if one can prove that the Westboro Baptist Church's rhetoric is defamatory, then one can revoke their right to free speech.
If you look at the language of the members of the Westboro Baptist Church, or even at the signs, you can see that their hatred is very clearly directed at one group. However, America is the target of the protests, not gay people. Homosexuals may be the cause, but their hatred is directed at America. Defamation law is nuanced, but that could be the loophole that grants them their rights. Whomever the speeches are directed at, they are full of homophobic hatred and plenty of defamation. Even the Westboro Baptist Church's main website is called GodHatesFags.com. They have no higher purpose. They only try to spread hatred and provoke reactions. When people attempt to stop the protest, the church currently sues them, and that is how the church funds many of its protests. This means that people on the side of equality are being punished for standing up to hatred. clearly this is not the sort of speech the Founding Fathers would have intended for the First Amendment to protect.
The Westboro Baptist Church chooses its targets based on how much media attention they will get. If the media would ignore them and stop airing stories every time a protest is held, then the Westboro Baptist Church would slowly fade away. The problem is, modern media is ratings-driven, and nothing gets ratings like
And I
controversy.
understand that you have the right to protest, but we're talking defamation
On
here.
a
And
public-
spreading lies on the web. Have you spread lies about his son? Have you gone on the internet and said that his son is gay, for example?
Of course not. You know we didn't
Some of
do
your
that.
supporters
When you-
have. If you're going to
when
be a
the-
leader of a church,
No,
ma'am, you have to
they
take
have
responsibility
not.
for your supporters.
No, they have not.
We went
The
online and I
sign
saw
that
it.
he's referring to that says Semper Fi Fags means you are always faithful to the fags.
Okay.
That's what this American military
Ma'am,
is.
I think
That's
it's
what America
disgusting
is.
that you even use the
and not
word.
only that, but you've sinned away your day of grace. America's doomed. If
Okay.
they think that this lawsuit is going to work, then why don't they file a lawsuit against the Lord their God? They are messing with
Why
the
don't we
wrong
talk
God.
about your
He
Lord
is the one
and
that
your
is
God?
killing those children.
Okay, let's talk about your God, because I don't know what planet you're from, but you say you thank God for IEDs, you thank God for 9/11, you thank God for dead soldiers, thank God for
Exactly.
AIDS. I thank God that you are not a leader of a real church. What you preach is hate, miss.
While they can't currently be stopped by legal measures, local communities have formed their own ways of countering the Westboro Baptist Church protests. A motorcycle club made up of veterans called the Patriot Guard Riders follows the members of the church from protest to protest and keeps them from getting too close to the funerals of veterans. Additionally, counter-protests form around the country wherever the Westboro Baptist Church chooses to strike.
Other occasions have warranted more drastic responses. The town of Owasso, Oklahoma, gathered in large crowds to heckle and eventually drive the Westboro Baptist Church out. Despite the unification against the church, the opposition is not all beneficial. The Westboro Baptist Church has been subject to violence because of these hostile protests, and has had windows broken in, tires slashed, and other attacks against them. While it admittedly is refreshing to know there is opposition to their actions, the violence is not justified. To some extent, Westboro Baptist Church could be considered victimized, and it would be better to not let them have more attention because of actions against them.
The right to free speech was not intended to protect bigots. It was intended to allow for debate without repercussion. The Westboro Baptist Church doesn't negotiate or bring up valid points. They shout in people's faces and throw tantrums. If a child throws a tantrum, the child would be disciplined. Why shouldn't a hate group receive the same treatment?